All right, looks like we are live.
Very good.
Um, I'm here with uh, uh, the band Head with Wings,
Hey there.
and, and last time we had Brandon on the show, and I guess he was taking a little break and let you do it this time.
Yeah. Yep.
And
Happy to be
this
here. Hey,
is
everyone.
this is a brand new album, Without Intervention, and I've been listening to this pretty much nonstop this past week, especially in my car, and then on different streaming sites, just to kind of get a little more familiarity to it. I like I said, I interviewed you guys, the band, last time on a previous album you put out. I believe it was the EP or something.
Yeah. Yeah. We put out the Comfort in Illusion EP in it was like the summer of 2021. Then we put out an expanded version of it with some remixes by Vikram Shankar. And that we put out on streaming, I think last summer. So a year later. So now we're following that up with just this last October, we put out Without Intervention, which is our second full length record. So,
Yeah.
how is it digesting that music when you've been a bit like under the weather? Like, you're like
Uh,
actually in the mood to listen to music when you're not feeling well?
oh yeah. What music for me is like a healing thing. So it's so much. I get less distractions, um, especially because I always listen to it on headphones because I like to get more impact of the music itself,
Gotcha.
not getting any uh, outside interference, so to speak, and and especially I like I said I listen to it in headphones, I listen to it in my car, so I constantly for the past week and a half I just been listening to it a little more than I normally would listen to an album before
Mm.
prepping for it. But uh, I got to say, this is an improvement on the first album. It sounds a little more sonically, there's more sonics to it.
Right. Yeah. The
And
first you're referring to From Worry to Shame, right? The debut.
yeah,
Yeah. That was a totally different animal. Like even the construction of the record, the songs, the production, it was all um done with some of the guys from the band Earthside, and it wasn't just a matter of like Ahead with Wings production philosophy. It was really relying on their kind of production oversight and how they were kind of guiding like the sonics of that record. And in
right,
hindsight, that's an interesting album. It's a bit more. It's a lot more sparse and um cold. I don't know. I think like cold, dry, sparse when I think of that record. And with this new one, it's just like 35 minutes of pretty much like it's almost like a 35-minute bombardment of like just kinetic energy, much
right,
more movement, much more in your face. It was asking a lot. We were asking a lot from Vikram with the mix on this one because there's so much going on. And it's our
right,
first record with keyboard elements and more sound design aspects. So
right,
there's just a lot jammed into that 35 minutes, whereas that first record it was just more sparse and
right.
minimalist.
Yeah, I know. With this one, it's like a wall of sound. Each song, it just, but without like you know, it sounding like it's bleeding through to everything. It's like it's like from the first song, you just like jump right into it. You're not even waiting for anything. You just jump right into the music, and and kind of like like you said, a 35-minute almost like a roller coaster, right?
Exactly. Yep. And
And
I've seen criticism of that, which is interesting. The fact that something can be cohesive and have continuity and kind of gets in, makes its point, and then gets out. Um, it's interesting that something like that would be criticized just by, for the form or nature of like how we're telling the story, or how we're presenting the
right,
music.
yeah, and then in today's society where we have uh, albums, this is like out of this old school album length
Hmm.
compared to newer ones are like 50 plus minutes, and sometimes I think uh, less is more.
Yeah, I think it depends on the material. We were
Yeah,
just letting the material kind of dictate where this record was going. And once we had a length of material that we felt like it was telling this story, doing justice to that, it just felt right. It wasn't like, oh, we need to write another song to get more runtime. But on the other hand, the new material that we're working on feels even more expansive. So, the next record could very well be uh more of a behemoth. It just depends on the nature of the music.
right. Um, my sound went out. I don't know if you
Oh
can
no, can you
still
hear me?
hear me or not.
Yep, I
Oh
hear
yeah.
you.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. Yeah. The one thing that I like about the band is you're progressive, but you're basically utilizing that word to its definition. You're not staying put in a certain thing, and you're not uh, relying too much on what came before you. You're kind of taking that and just going forward. And that's the
Right.
one thing I like about your music is that, I mean, in a traditional sense, compared to other kind of bands out there, uh, you're just so different.
Well, thank you. I mean, we're pulling from a lot, you know. Uh Progressive, I guess, in the sense that this is just the arena that is most accepting of maybe experimental rock music. Um yeah, each record is going to be its own thing. Uh some may be conceptual, some may be just more thematic and not a concept record. It all just depends. It's the stories are more of a framework for me to be able to emote a certain way to justify the way that I'm emoting in
Right.
vocalizing in the music. Um yeah, so it's just each one's like a new playground, and sometimes we don't even realize that we're working on a record, right? We're like, oh, we're just going to work on, maybe we'll just focus on songs or singles. And then sure enough, a vibe starts to emerge, and,
Right.
and that ends up informing a new idea, right? Which now just its whole existence just spawned off of these few song ideas that just came before it. And then it starts to snowball into something bigger.
Right. Yeah. And you were mentioning earlier about the keyboard element. Um, now, who's actually playing the keyboards, or is it just
Yep. So that's Vikram Shankar. He's kind of all over the place in the progressive world. He's in Silent Skies with Tom from the metal band Evergrey. He's in Redemption, progressive metal band. Uh, Lux Terminus. Have you heard of any of these?
I heard of Redemption.
Okay, right
I
on.
know of them through uh, their involvement with Ray Alder from Fates Warning.
Okay. Yeah, so he is based in Asheville, North Carolina. He's got his own studio there. He does video game scores. Like I think he did the music to the most recent Evil Dead game.
Oh,
Um, World War Z, the game. I know he's done some racing game on PS5, and I think he announced he's like doing a Warhammer game. So we were able to see like, okay, not only is he an incredibly talented composer, piano player, uh, engineer and whatnot, but he's also in this game world of like sound design elements, right? Like it's not just
Right.
music. It's like a creating a three-dimensional experience for the listener, and to be able to inject some of that into the way that we create music was really refreshing and rewarding. But so yeah, we hired him to basically write, record, perform, like the whole nine yards. As involved as he could possibly be with the music.
Right. That's cool. I mean, it's nice you can draw in from different areas, not just a traditional rock band uh, musician. You got
Right. It wasn't always that way though. I mean, so we started the band, or we started putting out work around, I don't know, 2013, publishing music for the first time, our first EP. So we really thought that the whole mission statement of the band was going to just be minimalist, just straightforward rock and roll elements. We didn't even we had no thoughts of having a keyboard player. And that we honestly thought that would stick, but I think we just kind of got tired of that format at a point. It felt like we were going to try to adhere to it just for the sake of adhering to it, And we were
right.
like, it gets to a point where you just want to have more, um, you know, more of a like a musical playground, to not be stuck with just the same elements.
Right.
And about just one more piece on genre, since to bring it back, since you mentioned progressive, uh, it's interesting that whenever I read reviews, um, each one tends to say that we're like a different genre. So, I've seen progressive post grunge, progressive post rock, alternative prog, art rock, progressive rock and metal. I've seen it all to describe what we do. And I think that's why ultimately we get labeled as prog or progressive, is just because most critics or listeners, they hear us falling into whatever bracket is close to what they already know. And
Right.
and some of those subgenres, I guess, of rock tend to get a bad rap. Like post grunge, for example, is probably one of the most hated genres on the planet because of all the bands that labels were trying to kind of milk the success of uh Nirvana, let's say, or Pearl
Right.
Jam, Alice in Chains, the whole wave of bands that came after that weren't really speaking from the heart, but more, I guess, just trying to recreate a sound that had already been done. So when I hear that, it kind of puts me off a little bit, but obviously we're not trying to do that. We're just literally putting out art that, speaks to us. And then we end up getting labeled as one of these many subgenres. So really when people just say a genre, I'm like, okay, I can kind of see that. I mean, Wall of Sound, I think post rock, right? We're really not a
Yeah.
post rock band, but you know,
I guess if so, I mean, you have all those different elements, and it's sometimes it's just hard to, for the sake of marketing. I think that's where
right.
you
Exactly.
need
Yeah.
to have you need to be put in a box, and I don't personally, I don't think that your band can be put in a box. It could be, it's many boxes together, so to speak.
Right. But
Because I do hear the prog. I do hear uh, the post rock. I hear the alternative. I don't hear grunge as
okay.
much. Um, I hear. I think where the post rock is kind of gets from the vocals, because it's not one of those. You're not a screamo band, but you're not one. You're not one of these operatic singers. You know, you're just it's more soulful,
Okay, cool.
and it's almost like you're letting the music do the overall talking of what's going on.
Well, that I'm glad you assess it that way. That's that's the other guys in the band would be thrilled to hear that because
Right.
you know, as having a big vocal performance when everyone's really trying to speak from the heart on their instruments, it really does rely on a solid mix to be able to convey all that. Otherwise, years of hard work and uh, you know, writing captivating melodies and whatnot, like all of that can kind of go lost on the listener potentially if the mix isn't handled with grace. So
Right.
for that to come across is really validating. I love to hear that.
I like hearing newer stuff. Like you know, there is a safe. You know, you feel safe when you listen to stuff that you're very familiar with. But at the same token, for me, I need to hear something new. You know, because it just it if you hear the same stuff over and over again, it no matter how fantastic musicianship is, the music gets boring.
Yeah.
You know, so I want to hear someone where they're kind of they don't have to push the envelope that far, but just enough where
That's a good
it's like
point.
you, you know, because a lot of the progressive rock bands still to this day they're trying to sound either like Genesis, Pink Floyd, or Yes. Those are the three bands that they're
And it
for
still
the most
sells
part.
too.
Yeah, it and and there lies in the comfort, the safety. You know, it's like okay, yeah, I know what these guys are going to sound like, so I'm not going to be disappointed. But then at the same time, I am disappointed because it's like you guys are great. You know, the whatever band is such great musicians. They should be able to push the envelope just much like the
Right.
people that they're copying
Well, it's
did
derivative.
back. Yeah,
But
you
then
know,
now
just kind of
you're getting into the discussion about musicianship versus creativity, you
right,
know, and it takes I mean, the world is like filled with just skillful musicians, but I would argue that the world is not filled with creative people, or at least people that know how to tap into the creativity. That I
right,
feel like that takes like almost like some mentorship, you know, like in my life, like I've needed there to be people in my life to kind of say like almost like reassure me when I was getting on to something, you know, like, oh,
right.
you have an angle here. Like there's, you know, there just needs to be now I sound preachy, but I feel like there there needs to be a way for musicians to be able to tap in and read those signs and the writing on the wall when you can go down one path or the other, you know, or I get you, and you could do both too. You can be all of it. But I'm always personally going to lean on creativity over musicianship. But I'm lucky that I could say that because a lot of the guys in my band are just increasingly more and more talented on their instruments. So
Right.
that is able to push me further down a path that, you know, when I'm working on my own ideas, uh, like you know, my own solo guitar ideas, like I'm going down a totally different path than where these guys in the band are pushing me into kind of uncharted territory. And
Right.
and my hope is that they can maintain a creative edge too, which is kind of what we do when we're able to get in the room together and feel out those ideas, you know, like what does each guy bring into the table this week? Um, and if you're not inspired on any given week, it's tough. And then maybe you can be more impressed just by more notes, you know, or just a really fast lick. But really, we're in this band, we're more in it for like the in between, like the feelings that you don't get from every other band, you know, and it might actually sometimes work to our detriment where we're trying to find ways to emote that people maybe don't want to hear or aren't ready to hear, or like you say, like it's not comforting because they don't know
Right.
it yet. And I think in this project we're okay with trying that, you know, seeing where that goes, trying to, I'm not saying we're going into the unknown, but we're trying to tap into emotions that are maybe overlooked.
Right. Yeah. And now I'm friends with a lot of people that do radio shows. So I'm sure you probably got your music out to for different places that will help you reach audiences that, you know, not something that you not normally would get to, you know, because that's the one thing with internet radio is, you know, it's like there's so many different markets out there. You know, you'll be able, if you don't
Right.
get to one, you'll get to to something else, you know. And what I like about your music too is also that you can you can cater to someone of my age and someone half my age, you know, because it has a very modern feel to it, you know. And because to me, I like modern sounding music, uh, and
And where do
and
you think
what
that
I
comes
found,
from? Sorry to interrupt, but where do you think that comes from?
me, I just like the idea of not uh, set in what I listen to. Let's say at a given moment, I want to listen to something new and fresh to my ears. So it's like, you know, it's almost like a journey.
Right. Like you
And
want to be a part of where music's going. You don't necessarily care
exactly,
about like you appreciate where it's been, but you want to be along for the ride.
yeah, exactly. And that's what, you know, a lot of people don't may have not got clued onto the name Prognaut. It's a progressive astronaut, you know, and astronauts explore. So
Right.
I'm
It's
basically,
cool.
so that's where that comes from, you know. And it's like, I mean, people of an older generation than me, they usually stop at a certain point on their music listening. They don't want anything new. And to me, it's like I have to have something new, you know. And
Right.
that's why when I found out about you guys and I listened to you, I'm like going, well, this is something new, you know. I'm really digging it. That's why I got in touch with you guys the first time around, you know, because I
Love that.
really wanted to talk to you guys because to me it's just fascinating, you know, to get into the mind of the musician, you know, and kind of tap into what the, you know, what went into, you know, let's say for instance this, what went into the whole recording of this. I mean, you guys, I mean, it's got this, the artwork is just really cool. And
Yeah, it had a lot
uh
to do with identity, you know, like searching for identity or uh not wanting to conform to a certain identity, running from who you are, maybe forgetting who you are. A lot of, I think a lot of it was coming out of the pandemic and you know, having the push and pull of like, is this band gonna last? What is this the industry like? Is there a place for us as artists? Um, and I don't know, we're still searching for that. But that's for when you look at the artwork, I think Nick was tapping into that aspect of the album, is just
right.
like, who am I? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing in life? Am I asking myself the right questions? Am I working with the right people? Am I being manipulated? Right? Am I being taken advantage of? Um, is what we do profitable? Is what we do, you know, creative enough? Like these are all things like we're asking
Oh
ourselves,
yeah.
like they're in and around the work while we're making the work. And I think all of that, the visual aspect of the CD layout was almost like Nick's synthesis of some of the core themes that he was able to dredge out of the record.
Right. Yeah, and also too is like, nowadays it's like, you got to put yourself, a band's got to put themselves, are they in it solely for the money or the art, and it's one of those tough things, which one is the right answer, and they both are, but
Right. Yeah, I think
but
it's worth it. Any band that's, proud enough of their work and willing to put themselves out there for the world to see, like I think it's always worth exploring if what you're doing is marketable, you know? But
right,
once you face that question and find out that maybe you're not, then you have to decide, and what am I in it for, Like
right,
if what I've been working for 10 years, if that's not marketable, do I work, and this is just like what any artist could ask themselves, do
oh
I
yeah,
go this way or do I go that way? Do I conform to the industry and just write progressive metal, ironically easily digestible prog metal for the Spotify playlist masses, or
right,
do I just keep like, chopping down the weeds and trying to dig deeper into what makes what makes me feel something when I'm listening to or working on music. Uh yeah, and it's a tough thing to face.
that's the one thing, and then also too, I mean, we've seen it, musicians in the past, bands in the past, when they do conform, then now the industry has got latched on. Now you can't really be creative without, basically severing all ties to what uh, your popularity,
Right.
the money making aspect of it, and so it's like it's just a weird thing the way, um, the industry is, and
It's like what sells isn't always creative, and then the creatives are kind of like left wondering why what sells is so monotonous and derivative, and that's just, you know, people just get used to what a certain sound and inclinations and certain like audible tendencies that they gravitate towards, and the labels want to cash in on that, so they're like, it's almost like Attack of the Clones, that's what I end up going on about, uh is that's just what's more easily consumable, I suppose.
right, yeah, that's always what I've always thought. It's like, okay, it's easy to, especially, you know, more of the pop music world today is, a friend of mine put it, it's almost like, what's the flavor of the day? What's good today isn't going to be good tomorrow because they're constantly trying, uh, but but then when you look at it, it's basically more of the same. It's just marketed differently.
Right.
And the thing is this, whenever I hear what people listen to, that are a lot younger than me, and I'm like going, that sounds like something that I heard 20 years ago, and it really wasn't that good 20 years ago. But for some reason,
Right.
someone's marketing it a little bit differently, and maybe adding the modern production to it. Kind of taking something that's mediocre and making it less mediocre.
Right.
And
The catch 22 is the band that should be heard might not have the money in the present to market in the present, and therefore their statement goes out there, but it kind of just lingers in the underground for festers for however long until maybe enough people discover it, or maybe then another band, like you say, comes along and then cashes in on the sound that maybe that
Right.
record was going for 20 years ago, but now someone new popularizes it. I feel like that happens a lot in
Yeah.
music.
But
So, yeah.
the one thing with your guys' music, again, like I said, it's got a fresh sound. Um, but at the same time, there's something familiar to it, but I can never pinpoint what it is familiar about it.
I
I think it's just the delivery of the whole thing.
Yeah, if I had to guess, I think so. Brandon is not like he likes kind of the cream of the crop of like progressive music. He's not in there like looking through all the nooks and crannies of like what bands are falling through the cracks necessarily. I might be more inclined to be the guy to do that. But Brandon, I know, kind of grew out of on guitar out of classic rock. So, like Black Sabbath or
Right.
um I know he cites that band a lot. So, or early heavy metal. So maybe some of the Brandon guitar stylings might be rooted in might cross over elements of like 70s prog and classic rock bands that maybe you might have an affinity for. Uh
Right.
I think we end up touching on that, as we're passing through whatever styles we're trying to work out on any given tune. That's my guess. Because Mike's drumming on this album isn't really like anything I've heard before. I feel he's like
No.
almost primal and very kind of primal and frantic, but also very calculated.
Yeah.
Um yeah, and everyone else is kind of just going for their own their own vibe, I think. So it's probably Brandon that brings the most continuity. And then
Right.
I know my voice gets I feel like I've been compared to literally everyone that's not even worth mentioning. Like I like a lot of the prog uh I don't want to say prog greats because it sounds like I'm tooting my own horn, but like I don't know, Geddy Lee. I've gotten grunge singers. I know you say we don't sound like grunge, but I've gotten all the grunge guys, Lane Staley, Eddie Vedder. I've gotten that. I've gotten compared to Maynard. I think it's all just like tonally. Like I don't think they're saying,
Right.
hey, you're like these people. I think they're saying, oh, like tonally, you're you're in similar realm as to some of these greats. Um, I've heard Dio. I don't know. I go through. I use mixed voice, chest voice, falsetto. I'm employing different techniques like a lot of these other singers would. But
Yeah.
I'm not trying to sound like anyone in particular. Again, I'm just trying to mesh with the music that I'm writing to.
Right. Right. It's, it sounds like what you're basically saying. It's like wherever the music is that's how you're gonna make your vocals kind of
Yeah,
sound.
I'm not trying to like force in like a stylistic intent onto the music. It's like especially with the new stuff we're working on now, some of the stuff is so expansive that I'm now almost having to call on like new techniques. I have to now figure out how to take new vocal techniques and kind of bring them into my repertoire the way that I would do it, but also not in a diminished capacity. I want to do it as great as any of the greats would. You know what I mean? So I have to
Exactly.
then otherwise I don't even want to adopt the technique. I would rather stay in my comfort zone and
Right.
but I'm trying to break out of that and employ more to because the music calls for it.
Right. Yeah, that's the one thing. It's like you have bands where the singers basically kind of sounds the same every album, and that or that could be, you have that familiar sense going for it. It's basically the singer's not pushing themselves,
Right.
you know, and that's cool when someone can push themselves. Just the same with their musical instrument. You're not gonna make it always sound. You're gonna have your signature sound regardless,
Yeah.
but just pushing it, is kind of kind of a good thing, at least to me. I like it when a musician or a singer can push themselves, try something a little new. You know, it could work, it may not work, but at least you try it and you can go, okay, well, yeah, that worked out. That worked out great here, but not so much here. So let's not do it again here.
Right. Yeah,
You
it's
know,
almost like an actor getting ready for a film, like we'll take the time, just like an actor will study like dialect, right, before taking on a role. Um,
right,
or even culture, mannerisms, body language, history, like we kind of have to do the same because the music is calling on things that take time to maybe learn and figure out. It's just not, maybe it's not there yet, so you have to
right,
take the time to bond with the material, which can be very frustrating, to be honest. Because
right,
you just want to keep you sometimes you want, to put the cart before the horse, and time again in the nature of this work, you just realize that never works out. You have to give it the
right.
time.
Now, did you guys have? There's a one song on here that I like them all, but there's just one song that kind of it has a very it sticks to your head, and it's called Galaxy.
Yep.
That's the one that just when the album's all done with, I hear the rest of the music going on, but then for some reason that song kind of just pops into my head, and
Well, I'm
I mean,
glad.
I guess if anything, if you were trying to go in the quote unquote singles market, that would possibly be a single because you're doing something with that song that makes the listener remember it afterwards. And
Right.
and that's
Whereas a lot of the other songs on the album have many moments that we would hope would be memorable, but they're kind of baked into
right,
into the puzzle or the myriad of
right,
ideas. But you're right, like Galaxy, you can walk away from that song and you can hang on to the intention of it. Like
right, right.
it
And
that sticks with you, whereas you have to search a lot for the other stuff. That does make sense. That's why we selected it as the sole focus track from the album that we did a music video for.
right, right,
So the whole promotion, like, cycle of Without Intervention was kind of abridged and condensed to just one track separated by a few weeks and then the release. um I think a lot of that had to do with a really just nauseating gestation cycle for having to revisit. We had to go back and rewrite and re-record and reproduce and remix and remaster uh this record, and that led to a lot of frustrations and lost time. And because we have a new ensemble now, like, and we have during the whole promotion of that record that wasn't necessarily on that album, it kind of prompted us to want to kind of get it out the door. We're still, obviously we're supporting it, right? Like, we're still supporting it as best we can, but we're fully immersed in the writing of a new record with the current iteration of the band. So whether or not we re-kickstart, let's say, like a campaign for the song Galaxy, I don't think that's entirely likely, but we're always going to be championing, that song in any of our music. And I'm glad to hear
right,
that you thought it had single potential, because we did submit it to web radio, local radio stations where we had connections. Prague magazine, the video for that actually won track of the week that it came out.
right.
So it's gotten some cool nods. It hasn't made waves obviously in any mainstream capacity, but uh there's going to have to be a lot more that happens than just Galaxy for us, I feel like, to break that wall down. you know
Right, right. But then at the same time, it's like uh, the rest of the album is like, it's one of the, you I I'll say that you need to listen to it all the way through, not just go jump over to Galaxy and then hit that on infinite repeats. You know, you have to listen to the whole album just to get the whole vibe. And it's almost like um, that's the one thing that's missing from a lot of the mainstream music today. The more concerned with singles as opposed to
Right.
the album. And uh, I'm from the era where it was albums. You know, singles were just an incidental thing that happened. You know, but
Right.
you know, it's like you got to listen to the whole album from start to finish. You know, with little to no interruption because you know it kind of it's just the same as when you watch a movie. You can't just stop a really good movie in between and go start doing something else. You
Hmm.
know, you gotta set aside the time. You know, it's 35 minutes. It's you know, so it's not that long in today's you know today's media world. You know,
Hmm.
35 minutes is a you know almost basically a blink of an eye. So you know, for someone that doesn't have 35 minutes, I feel bad for
Right. And if you don't, well, go listen to Galaxy, I guess.
yeah, right,
But
right. Yeah, but it's
but
like, you
yeah.
know, 35 minutes, you can't go wrong,
I don't even know if we'll release another record that short, to be honest, because I feel like ideas are these days are feeling more expansive. Um,
right,
there's a tune that, without spoiling too much, that we're working on now that's just under 12 minutes.
right,
That's far and away our long would be our longest piece, with Comfort and Illusion, the song, being like just under 9, I think.
right,
So we're moving, just as we're moving into like even headier, longer form music, we're still writing, like a 4 or 5 6 minute tune that is still longer than today's standards, but probably
right,
even more digestible than, you know, something that's bordering on 12 minutes. But
right,
yeah, I think I'm from the generation that's hanging on to what your generation doesn't want to lose, right? Like
right.
the album format, concept records, just things being thematically linked. Like, there's
Exactly.
Absolute Zero on this record is basically Galaxy 2. It's just not called Galaxy 2. We could have called that song Galaxy 2, or Galaxy Part 2, but Absolute
Right,
Zero thematically made more sense when I was digging through some of the other characters and where they were heading, and how some of their themes overlapped with other characters. It didn't seem right to give Galaxy, the character, another title on the record. So I'm even
right,
like debating things like that, right? Like, oh, that's too much Galaxy. We don't need Galaxy Part
right,
2. Absolute Zero, even if it deals with a subject matter that has to do with where that character winds up, um, and some of the characters that you see in the music video, uh, it just made more sense to give it its own unique title.
right. That's good because when you make sequels, it I don't know, it's kind of nice if you just kind of let someone kind of figure it out.
Right. And that's a
You
thing,
know,
a hot topic in the band, is not everyone, at not everyone at all times is super supportive of, um being almost like force feeding concepts to the audience, like,
right,
so in a recent review of, my lyrics were singled out, and the review said, it wasn't a very good review, but one line stuck with me, which was, his lyrics can mean everything and nothing all at the same time. So, when I honestly, that's kind of a compliment, because
yeah,
if you know if it means too much to the writer, it might mean less to the audience. Like, they
right,
might not be able to bond with it because it's too directly related to something very on the nose. So these are things that I'm aware of as the lyricist. It's difficult to navigate that, but on Without Intervention, that was meant to wrap up all the concepts and themes and characters, uh, from the prior two releases. So now that
right.
we've kind of put a bow on that for now, we're kind of leaving the Without Intervention universe of From Worry to Shame, Comfort EP, and Without Intervention kind of in its own box, and now embarking on, you know, a new story,
That's yeah.
a new
I
sandbox.
do. Yeah. One thing I like about lyrics is I don't like them to be direct. I need them, that I can go back and I can listen to them, and maybe it'll take me a few times to figure out what the message is. But then at the same time, I don't think the only person that knows the message really is the person that wrote the lyrics. We can interpret that, your lyrics as to mean something based on where we are, the listener where is in their life, and how it, something strikes them. It's like, oh, this is familiar to me, but it may not have been something that was in your mind when you were writing them. That's to me, that that's what I like about it, because it's nice when I heard a couple singers say that they were told that what their lyrics meant to them from the listener, and they go, that didn't occur to me that's where, that point of view. And so it's kind of cool that,
Yeah, some ambiguity is a good thing. I
yeah,
think too much of it, and I feel like you then run into like, okay, now it might be meandering a bit. And I've also, this is the irony of music criticism and how we describe things, because some things that might be a compliment to others are is not, or comes across uh negatively. So
right,
yeah, it's an interesting thing. I end up reading the reviews and such. Like, I'm connected to our PR, so I'm dialed into the good and the bad of what the
right,
internet has to say. And we're certainly not a big enough band at this point where like there's like hate in comments and stuff like that where I just have to stay away from stuff. It's not like that. It's more just
right,
like, oh, this is this person's take on the work. And a lot of
right.
the time I think it does require, we were asking a lot of the listener with this one, almost like hoping they would go back and listen to the other two releases to kind of, because it is like the third of this triptych in a
Right.
way. So, it's asking a lot, and that's fine. Um,
I usually do that regardless, because uh, if whenever I get a new album from a band, I like to go revisit the other ones just to see, uh, mostly to see the progress that they've gotten from the first to the current,
yeah,
and 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 to see if there's any little hidden things that I may have missed the first time around. To, it's like, oh, okay, that, it's kind of cool to, just like any kind of media, if you could go back and listen to or watch it again, you may hear or see something that you didn't before. And
right. Yeah, and it's, it requires the audience to have the time to put in, to connect with the material. If you take years to write and produce something, like, you really can't expect people to just get it overnight, because clearly even you as the artist didn't. It took, like I was going on about earlier, it takes time to bond and connect with the work. If you don't put that time
exactly,
in as the artist, then surely the audience is, gonna miss the point, maybe not connect with it, or see through it because you weren't willing to put in the time as the creator. But it's a two-way street. I think the audience needs to put in the time to connect. That's part of why we're not, we, unless one of our songs in the future blew up on TikTok for whatever reason, That's beyond me. But like I know we don't exist to create like short form content that's just easily digestible for people. Like that's not what we're in it for, you know.
Right.
And I think a lot of bands, they don't question that. They're just like, oh, we're in a band, we're making music, we paid money to produce it, we have to do this, we have to put it out this way. um you know, they might not even have personalities that are conducive to towards success on social media. Like that has to be in somebody innately as like a charismatic and socially oriented person, which in my experience, most of the artists that I've worked with and musicians are not those types of people. So they're all
Right.
left wondering, well, why is our music being left behind? Why are we going unheard? Well, you know, that's more of an audience problem than anything, I feel. How people are connecting to their music media, where they're spending time consuming their media. And the fact that it's largely short form content on TikTok kind of just makes people dumber. As much as I'll watch some YouTube shorts too. You know, I have a YouTube premium subscription, but I keep my art and my music as sacred compared, to that stuff. That's like trashy content. It's like junk food content. We're not making junk food content. So
Exactly.
and part of that is you might just get left behind. Uh in
Yeah.
where the world is heading, where the mediated world is heading, it's not as conducive to a world where the world of concept records that you're clinging on to from your youth, and
Right.
that I'm clinging on to uh as probably a last bastion of hanging on to the, what you were afraid of losing.
Right.
So it's like eventually it will be lost, or that art form will be lost if people just uh you know adhere to what sells in the present.
Well, it's just, you know, a lot of it is using that fast food mentality, you know, and people, and but that at the same time, I hear people wanting something more, but they
Mhm.
don't know where to get it because of that fast food mentality that this is, you know,
Right.
being big, you know, it's like everything's coming at you, you know, 100 miles per hour, that you don't get a chance to see some of these, for lack of a better way of describing, slower pieces, something that's taking its time
Be
to
created,
be
right?
creative. Yeah.
And then yeah, the industry doesn't care how long something takes to be created, unfortunately. And I've seen that. Well, this probably, no, I don't want to say frame it the wrong way, but let's take a band like Earthside. You know, their newest record took 8 years to come out, basically, to from beginning to end. Um, there's a lot of story in there, and 8 years of a band of musicians living their lives and living their art, day in, day out. But that story is probably going to be lost on most people that even engage with that band, because the typical prog metal people that just want to hear the coolest of the genre, they might not be, you know, they might not care about, who played in this symphony, or who played in this orchestra, or not, who
Right.
played this particular instrument at that point in the song. All of that's out there to be discovered, I'm sure, to be learned.
Right.
But the average young music listener on a streaming platform, I don't know, is really invested in it as much as the band was invested in their artistry. So if the industry doesn't care about how long things take to be created and doesn't put value in that, then it's kind of just a losing battle as an artist, right? Because you
Right.
have to be doing it, just those 8 years of work have to be for yourself, and not necessarily for to be validated
Others.
by everyone else, which just a big catch 22.
Yeah, yeah, that's um, and I think it's if someone gets upset that it's getting lost on them, then maybe they shouldn't be a, a creative person, in that sense.
Hmm.
I'm not saying that they need to just make the music for themselves, but they need to. You guys need to be happy with what the product is before you
Hmm.
put it out into the world, or else it's like almost it's like what's the point, you know?
Right.
Um, I think that you got to be proud of it. You got to be going, yeah, uh, this is 2023. This is 2023. This is the best thing that we put out to date. You know, and you'll say that in a couple of years' time of the next one. But that's the whole point: is you keep on bettering yourselves. You know,
Exactly.
and you got to be proud of uh, of your work, or else there's really honestly there's no point. You might as well just give up and just do like you're saying, the TikTok videos. It's like
Right. And I have no problem with that as long as the people that put it out like are passionate about it, you know? Like cuz
right,
nobody wants to watch some short form content of somebody just putting out some contrived like video that isn't speaking to them or to an audience or to anyone really. It's just there because they thought it had to be there. That is the worst thing
right,
that you can do. Is just to do it just because you thought it had to be done is
right,
just that's like soulless, you know? And that's where a lot of the entertainment industry is kind of heading, even like the games industry dangerously heading there. Streaming and movie business. I don't know. I feel like the last year did see some surprise films and shows. So like maybe there is
right,
better writing happening in film and TV now, but
right,
there's other these other entertainment industries I feel like they're dangerously uh kind of bordering on preying on what am I trying to say? I don't know, like just trends and fads and you know easy
right.
microtransaction type stuff.
Exactly. And you got to do stuff for the. I think you got to do stuff for the long haul, because you don't want to put out an album and then it just basically becomes shelved. They put it back on the shelf somewhere, never to be touched ever again. And that's not. I mean, again, that's kind of not really a good reason to make music, just to be having it shelved that way.
Right. Yeah,
But
it's tough.
it,
Yeah, business and art, they like they overlapped and intersect at weird points where you have to really ask yourself some tough questions. But anyone that's in it for real will face that down, one day for sure.
right. But you know, um, again, if anyone out there hasn't purchased this, you can go over to their Bandcamp, and you can either you can buy the CD, you can buy the digital, whatever you want. And perfect thing too is you can you could stream it over there, so you don't you could have the purchase copy and not having to go out and pick like a CD. You don't have to go and get it out of your collection to go and listen to it. You got that convenience of the streaming.
Yep.
And
And Bandcamp, you actually get the hard audio files too for on your phone
yeah,
or your computer. So
so so it's a win-win thing with that. It's that's why I enjoy purchasing stuff off of that that company. And then of course, I think they're starting back up in February, starting again the Bandcamp Fridays, I believe.
Yeah, I know there was some changes, right? With like a different company bought Bandcamp, or the
Yeah,
Epic Games were like sold it, flipped the company. Yeah, I haven't really
yeah.
kept up with that, but I know Bandcamp
I
Fridays, I
know
guess, might have stopped for a little bit, but yeah, it's
it
coming back.
stopped in It stopped in January. That's what I heard for sure. But hopefully it'll continue up, because then it just means that's the best time. If you're going to buy something from a band, buy it then, because the band gets everything. That
Right. Thanks for that. And yeah, I guess another note on this, the availability of the CD is Bandcamp's probably the best. I mean, if you want to buy it on Bandcamp, that's fine. If the shipping, if you're in Europe or UK and the shipping is not so satisfactory, you can pick it up at Just for Kicks Music, which is a German web retailer for progressive music. So you could, if you're over in Europe or the UK, they have a good stock over there at Just for Kicks Music, and you could just check that out on their website. But otherwise, feel free to go over to Bandcamp and pick it up there.
So how far along are you on? I guess you could say the third full length album.
Yeah. Uh, so we started teasing at material in the spring of 2020. Was it 22? Yeah, I think 2022. So some of this stuff's been, there's usually like a gestation period where some of the material will be around for like a few years, and that leads into newer material that we end up wrapping up while that stuff is being finalized. So it's already been, we've already been writing for it for a few years, I guess, which is crazy to say, but it's probably like 30 30 to 40 minutes of music written already. So, I mean, already exceeding the runtime of Without Intervention, pretty
Right.
much. So, uh, yeah, it'll be some time, and we're not rushing it, but we're feeling very inspired, and it's been a lot of fun writing with the current uh lineup. Which I'll just for the sake of clarification, because I know a lot of our reviews, there was some confusion around who wrote and performed on Without Intervention and who was in the ensemble at the time of its release. It's changed a little bit more. So just now, for anyone who cares, uh, it's me on vocals, Brandon Cousineau on guitar, Sayer Whitford on guitar, Vikram Shankar is playing the keys again, Mike Short on drums, and Connor Oyster on bass. Connor and Vikram were guests on this record Without Intervention, but they're Connor's now in the group. We're actually working on actively on the new release.
Oh, cool. And do you guys play locally for
Yeah,
those?
yep, yeah, we do. Right now, we just did a show in November. We did that with Randy Mixstein from Porcupine Tree and Toby Driver of the band KO Dot, if you know them. We played a show with them kind of on our home court in Hamden, Connecticut, on the week of Thanksgiving, and that was more of like a celebration of the record. That was a great gig. But yeah, no, there's just, we're looking at like some festival options for 2024, but pretty much I think it's, aside from maybe some stints here and there, maybe regionally, or at the end of the year, maybe something a bit more extended tour wise. I think it's pretty much going to be like a heavy riding year for us.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just for anybody that's in that area, your
Oh
area,
yeah,
and also, you know, and always look at your website, for any of that information. So,
yep,
anything that comes up between now and then,
for sure. Our,
you
our
could,
our concert dates will always be they'll be posted on our Bandcamp page, and also on our link tree, which is just linktree.com/head with wings music.
and then I found out about you guys on Instagram,
Oh,
which
okay. Who,
Yeah,
what
but
page were you on? Or did we reach out to you? We might have.
I don't remember which was the one, but Brandon reached out
Awesome.
because I actually I reached out first. I go, you know, I really like music, and I want to talk with you guys. And
Yeah,
then I
we're
said, but
responsive. We're not like, oh, if there's a PR cycle, we're probably soliciting ourselves a bit more, but otherwise we're accessible on those platforms, like we always respond to people. So Instagram is a good way to get a hold of us personally. Um for whatever reason. I mean, we're happy to chat.
right, all right. Well, again, I'm gonna plug it. You need to buy this thing because this is a really good album. Came towards the tail end of the year, so you're gonna probably get a little bit more people talking about it. You know, because in 2024 than you did in 2023 because
Right.
it, it always happens that way. It's like if you release something towards the end of the year, you expect the press cycle to start up, um, the following few months of the first of the year. But it's an important album for 2023.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, and I think our PR the Dream Broker group did a pretty good job um getting it around like in a pretty condensed format. I mean, I saw a ton of people wrote about it. I saw it. It seemed like some people wrote about it just because they saw other people writing about it. So that was a cool thing to see.
Right.
Um, it seems like it's not being ignored on streaming platforms, which is great. It was doing well on Bandcamp. So just to everyone out there that's listening, if you're a fan already, appreciate you being with us. And for those that haven't checked it out yet, uh, listen to what Ron said, and please do. More to
Yeah,
come over the next few years for sure.
and I look forward to that. And just want thank you again for letting me reschedule with you
Oh,
last week, and
totally fine.
and glad that we've got to connect and to talk about the album, and a little bit more. And I do appreciate the time that you took out to talk with me.
Happy to be here. Thanks for taking the time to talk about the record. Really appreciate
Oh,
that.
you're welcome. And I look forward to the next one, and we'll keep in touch that way.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, reach out anytime you want to chat about it.
All right. All right. Well, thanks again, and I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. And stay tuned for what's to come with Head with Wings, because I think you guys are going to be a household name within the community. I have that feeling.
Thank you.
All right. Take it easy, and I'll talk to you soon.